let me introduce two gentlemen from Frontier Lithium. So our first presentation this season, we have Frontier Lithium. So Garth Drever, he's there at site. He's starting up the drill program for the fall, so it's pretty exciting. He's trying Elon Musk's internet system, which seems to work quite well for him there. So even the video comes across really well. So yeah, Garth has over 40 years of experience, mainly in uranium exploration with Cameco all around the world, and but he's been with Frontier the last 10 years, being leading all these discoveries that were made recently. And some of these discoveries you could see this year. Just last week, there was a really spectacular drill hole intersection, which I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more about. And then we have Bora here as well, who's looking after investor relations and communication. And so he, before joining Frontier, he was managing director of Ultra Deep Mining Network, and was also the COO for the Center of Excellence in Mining Innovation. So we've got both of them joining us today, and I think I'm probably not alone in the audience, not knowing much about the lithium industry. So I'm really looking forward to getting a better idea about it. So might as well get started. And so yeah, welcome Garth, Bora. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Bora is going to be running the presentation, and I'm going to be telling him next. And simply because, as Attila said, we just set up the Starlink. It's really fast. We have over 200 megabytes per second of download speed, and in excess of 30 upload. But every once in a while, it pauses for a momentarily, and we did a few test runs and decided that this would be a much better way to do it, because I may be paused out briefly. And first of all, I'd like to thank the Sudbury Prospectors and Development Association for this opportunity to talk about our project here. And it may be a first for one of these presentations where we're actually presenting from inside a prospector's tent at the site with Starlink. So I'm hoping it goes well. I was trying to do it in the core shack, but when I got down there, there was too much noise from the generator, which is beside, and they usually put you there to mute the sound for the rest of the camp. So I'm stuck in my own tent here. So if you can go to the next slide, Bora. This is just simply a statement to indicate that anything we may say now may change or may not be truthful in the future when we get more information. So we can go on to the next one. So what I'd like to do is just I've got something stuck in the middle of the screen here. Okay, this is an outline of what we're going to talk about tonight. I'll just do a brief description of the project, and then I'd like to just do quite a brief overview of pegmatites, just for my own information and for the audience as well, and then talk about the geological setting and go on to the work completed. And then after that, Bora will take over talking about the pre-economic assessment and that. So keep going. Okay, the project is located about 175 kilometers north of Red Lake. We're in a similar geological setting as the Tanko pegmatite in Manitoba. We're right along the boundary between predominantly plutonic Barons River and the volcano-plutonic Sachiego sub-province of the Archean Superior Province. I've just shown the location of the PAC project, and in Winnipeg, just off Winnipeg, you can see Tanko. Separation Rapids is very close to it, and there's some other pegmatites with resource that I've posted on that map. If you can go on to the next slide. Next slide. Okay, the PAC project consists of over 27,000 hectares. It expands about 65 kilometers along that boundary. There's a series of paraluminous granitic plutons. They're 2 microgranites, and the Bear Head Lake Fault Zone occur right along that boundary, and it's on what has been referred to as Electric Avenue. PAC and Spark deposits, as well as the Bolt pegmatite, which was recently discovered, occur at the northwest end of the Pakiagama Lake Granite Pluton, and they appear to be related to that. The Pennock pegmatite, which is 25 kilometers farther north, granite. We're pretty sure there's a correlation there. The PAC deposit has a 9.3 million ton resource, averaging just over 2% lithium oxide. And what's important is that it's most likely less than 0.1% Fe2O3. And we believe it's the largest technical grade deposit in North America known to management. It's got about 500 meters strike length. It's about 300 meters deep. The estimated true width varies from anywhere from 10 to 125 meters. It's vertically oriented, and we estimate the average width is about 45 meters. The deposit remains open to depth and along strike to the northwest, and we've produced a rare 7.2% concentrate similar to Albemarle's premium product. A life of mine sample product qualified with the glass and ceramic market. So we go to the next slide. This is the Spark deposit. We have a 3.3 million ton size, averaging just almost 1.6% lithium oxide in the indicated category, and 15.7 million tons, averaging 1.3 in the inferred category. It remains open in all direction. We had a current infill drilling is underway, and on September 13th, we announced a drill hole of 320 meters, and it averaged 1.68% lithium oxide. We'll talk a little bit about the significance of those numbers later in the talk. At surface, it's at least 2 times larger than the PAC pegmatite. Widths vary, widths are greater than 100 meters, and the strike length is more than 300 meters. The mineral grade and composition is comparable to the PAC deposit, which is 2.3 kilometers away. The Bolt pegmatite, which was discovered just last year, it's between Spark and PAC. It's been traced over 600 meters, with some of the zones up to 50 meters wide. Our initial channel sample that we did resulted in over 36.4 meters, averaging 1.5% lithium oxide. It seems to be concordant with the host rock and appears to be vertically emplaced. The Pennock pegmatite, which is a historic showing, we visited it a couple of years ago, and there's an outcrop that's about 30 meters by 16 meters containing squee, which is a spodumene quartz intergrowth. We channeled it, and we had 16 meters, which graded 2% lithium oxide with a 12-meter zone, averaging a little bit better than that at 2.35. And it looks like it's going to be less than 0.1% Fe2O3. We'll talk about the significance of that later as well. And this certainly substantiates the fertility of the Electric Avenue for high-quality LCT pegmatites that host rare low-iron spodumene. Next slide. If we that picture is one that I took about 2 days ago, and it shows Lucky Lake, shape of a horseshoe, was named that prior to the discovery. But below that, you can see the drill that's doing our first hole, and it's approximately on one of our channel cuts, which is close to a little over 100 meters long. And there's another channel cut. It's about 85 meters away. That's just over 100 meters long. So these are 2 of the channels that are kind of central to the deposit. If we go to the next slide. I got to move something on my screen here. Quite a bit of it is being blocked. Okay, what's a pegmatite? Well, Dave London in his 2008 book defines it as essentially igneous rock, commonly of granitic composition, that is distinguished from other igneous rocks by its extreme coarse but variable grain size, or by an abundance of crystals with skeletal, graphic, or other strongly directional growth habits. They often form in veins that open up at the end of the crystallization of a large intrusive mass. Most igneous minerals exclude water from their structure, so the last magma to cool often ends up enriched in water. kind of lost it there. Enriched in water and other incompatible elements. It essentially lowers the melting temperature and allows the formation of very large crystals. So most of these big minerals you see in geological labs are from granite pegmatites. They tend to intrude along faults, fractures, foliation, and bedding. And one of the largest, which is Greenbushes in Western Australia, it's only 3 kilometers long and a few hundred meters wide. And most pegmatites are much smaller than that. Go on to the next slide, please. Okay, this is a classification done by Cherney out of Manitoba, and it shows the various pegmatite classes and pegmatite families. There's basically 2 different types. There's the LCT, or lithium, cesium, tantalum, which are derived from S-type granites. And there's the NYF, niobium, yttrium, and fluorine pegmatites derived from the A-type granites. This talk is only going to be focused on the LCTs. And there's several pegmatite classes, and we're going to again focus on the rare element classes. And within the rare element classes, we're going to focus on the subtype of the type of the subclass, which is a pedalite, the pedalite complex type, which the Pachyagama Lake granite is. So most of the LCT pegmatites, they represent the most highly differentiated and elastic crystallized component of granitic melts. All of them are emplaced in orogenic hinterlands, and they produce a product of plate convergence. LCT pegmatites consist mostly of quartz, case bar, and albite, and muscovite. Accessory minerals can include garnet, tourmaline, and apatite. The major lithium ores are spodumene, pedalite, and lepidolite. Cesium, which comes from pollucite, and tantalum, mostly from columbite tantalite. Cassiterite is the tin ore, and beryl would be the beryllium ore. They also occur in LCT pegmatites. So the Pachyagama Lake pegmatite is a highly evolved, zoned, complex type pedalite subtype lithium, cesium, tantalum pegmatite. And it contains squee, which is a spodumene quartz intergrowth after primary pedalite. So the next slide. There's 2 basic types of LCT pegmatites. One of is primary spodumene, and the other one is the pedalite subtype. The primary spodumene are the most common. They tend to have simple mineralogy and limited mineralogical zonations. They usually consist of coarse grained spodumene, 6 centimeters plus in length, and randomly oriented, which is a jackstraw texture, and a gang of predominantly quartz and lesser amounts of sodic feldspar. Spodumene can range in colors from off-white to dark green. Iron and other impurities constitute anywhere up from 1 to 2%, but they can be low at as low as 0.1% iron oxide. Examples would include the Quebec lithium, Nemaska, Moblan, and Rose pegmatites in Quebec, and the Georgia Lake, Mavis Lake, Raleigh Lake pegmatites in Ontario. If you go to the next click, the pedalite pegmatites are not nearly as common as the primary ones. They occur in low pressure Abakumi metamorphic regimes like orogenic rift belts. Zoning tends to be highly developed with complex mineralogy, and there's a temperature pressure path, which is shown in the graph to the right, while cooling, which determines whether the pedalite remains stable or reverts to a fine-grained spodumene quartz intergrowth. Next slide. More on the pedalite pegmatites. The chemistry of what we're calling squee, it's essentially the same as pedalite from which it was generated. It's about 4.5% lithium oxide. Pedalite incorporates very little iron when it forms. So the resultant spodumene in the squee is generally less than 0.1% Fe2O3. Pedalite pegmatites such as those at Separation Lake, Ontario, and the Dibs pegmatite at Burnick Lake in Manitoba, they don't have the squee mineral assemblies, they're just pedalite. Significant squee-bearing pegmatites are rare, and they include the Tanko pegmatite in Manitoba, Bakita in Zimbabwe, and now Pack, Spark, Pennock, and Bolt pegmatite in Ontario. And we know that from Pennock and Bolt because I had Peter Vanstone here over the last couple of days, and he's visited all 4 of these deposits or pegmatites. The image there on the extreme right is a pedalite, a single crystal pedalite. You see the notebook there to get a scale of the size, and that entire pedalite crystal has been converted to quartz spodumene intergrowth. And on the center one shows the zoning and the alignment of the crystals within the squee. And that one is from the Pack deposit. Next one. Crystallization and fractionation are fairly important with LCT pegmatites. The LCT pegmatites, they're enriched in incompatible elements, including lithium, cesium, tin, rubidium, and tantalum. And the melt from which the LCT pegmatite crystallizes are enriched in fluxing components, including water, fluorine, phosphorus, boron, and that all reduces the melting temperature and the viscosity and the density while increasing the bulk diffusivity of the melt. Pegmatites can thus form thin dikes and massive crystals despite their felsic component. Fluid inclusion studies show that their formation is between 350 and 550 degrees Celsius with relatively low pressures in the range of 3 kilobars. Fractionation, the most proximal and the least evolved pegmatite bodies in the LCT field contain only the standard rock-forming minerals of the S-type granite. The most fractionated pegmatites, beryl appears, then columbite, then tantalite, and spodumene, and finally pollucite, just to show that these are highly evolved. The most highly fractionated rare element enriched pegmatites only constitute about 1 or 2% of regional pegmatite populations. So they're quite rare. The diagram just shows that migration from the host granite in the bottom through beryllium, niobium, tantalum, lithium, and all the way up to the cesium at the very end. The next slide. Zoning is another fairly important thing. Most of the pegmatites are concentrically but irregularly zoned. Its zoning can be both mineralogical and textural. The next click. The outermost border zone, it's a chilled margin, which is only a few centimeters thick. It's usually fine grained with quartz, muscovite, and albite. The wall zone is typically less than 3 meters thick. And the crystals are quite small. They rarely exceed 30 centimeters with grain sizes between the fine grain border and the intermediate zone. Main minerals are, again, albite, perthite, quartz, and muscovite. The next one shows the intermediate zone, which is yellow in the diagram. It comprises everything between the wall and the center core. And it may be discontinuous. Main minerals are plagioclase, case bar, mica, quartz. In the most evolved LCT pegmatites, beryllium or beryl, spodumene, albite, and columbite, tantalite, pollucite, and lithium phosphates are present. Overall grain size is coarser than the wall zone. And the core zone is typically monomineralic quartz, but you can get perthite, albite, and spodumene or other lithium alumisilicates in it. The next slide. This is just kind of what we found at PAC. It's the intermediate zones. They're mapped by Peter Vanstone, and they kind of follow the nomenclature that was developed at the Burnick Lake Tanko mine. The intermediate zones consist of the upper intermediate, central intermediate, and the lower intermediate. The upper intermediate at PAC is dominated by squee, which is this oriented spodumene and quartz intergrowths after the petalite, with lesser gray case bar. There's primary spodumene and quartz, and some phosphate minerals and some mica are fairly common in it. The grades of the UIZ is typically anywhere between 3 and as high as 4.5%. The central intermediate is predominantly coarse. There's some of our grains or megacrysts are up to 50 centimeters in size, case bar with lesser quartz and mica. Portions of the zone display replacement of case bar with lithium micas and lepidolite and euhedral blue apatite. There's often pollucite blebs, which is the primary ore of cesium, are present in our CIZ, and it's also present at Tanko. The lower intermediate, which comprises the bulk of the pegmatite, it contains predominantly case bar, sodic spar, or plagioclase, squee, lithium muscovite, and rare pollucite. And aplite is fairly common throughout the lower intermediate zone. We did a study on the spodumene just to get an idea of the iron content and other impurities within the spodumene. And we did that using electron microprobe to analyze the iron content. And the samples were taken from the UIZ and the LIZ at PAC. So the graph shows sort of the range, and it is quite low. If you go to the next click, it shows in yellow the UIZ, and in orange is the LIZ results. Basically, the spodumene from UIZ are the lowest inherent iron, ranging from below detection to 0.05% Fe2O3. And the spodumene from the more heterogeneous LIZ contain variable iron content, ranging from below detection to 0.19 weight percent iron. And the iron content in the spodumene and the LIZ, it appears to increase in proximity to these iron-rich metasedimentary country rocks, like some of the banded iron formation, but only within a few meters of that. So most of the spodumene is very, very low in iron. These are just, you won't be able to read all this, but it's basically a list of up to 40 of some of the more common minerals that come with LCT pegmatites. The list on the left-hand side are the rock-forming minerals, which would be quartz, case bar, plagioclase, and on the right-hand side are some of the ore minerals within the LCT pegmatites, like petalite, spodumene, eucryptite, bauxite are some of the more common ones. Mica is present. There's several different phosphates which are usually present. We don't have a lot at PAC. Tourmaline is often present because of the boron, and several of the oxides, which include tantalite, columbite, cassiterite, wagenite, microcline, etc. And there's other minerals such as beryl, pollucite, and holmquistite. If you just go to the next slide, talk a bit about, I got a couple of maps on the geological setting. This is sort of a repeat from the beginning, but it does show that the project spans the 65 kilometers along the boundary of the Barons River and Sachigo sub-provinces. The Bearhead Fault has been traced for over 140 kilometers along that boundary. To the north, the favorable net setting sedimentary greenstone belt, dated at about 29-25 MA, lies to the north, and the North Spirit Lake belt, which is slightly younger, lies to the south. There's up to 9 paraluminous granite plutons that have been mapped along that regionally distributed along that boundary zone. As mentioned before, the PAC and Spark deposit, as well as Bolt pegmatite, occur at the northwest end of the Pakiagama Lake granite pluton, and we're pretty sure they're related. And if you look at Pennock, which is farther to the northwest, it's near the southern end of another paraluminous granite that's 25 kilometers up there. Next slide. There's a thin sequence of metavolcanic and lesser metasedimentary rocks that span between the favorable net setting and the North Spirit Lake greenstone belt. That's pretty well where our PAC and Bolt and Spark are. And to date, those three bodies occur right in the proximity of Pakiagama Lake. The PAC deposit occurs within the Pakiagama Lake granite pluton on the boundary, with metasediments to the north on the footwall, including banded iron formation. The Spark and Bolt are both hosted in metavolcanic rocks, and it's near the boundary with the metasediments. Next slide. I'll just talk about the work that has been done. I'll quickly go through this. It was discovered by the Ontario Geological Survey in 1998. Frontier, at that time was Houston Lake Mining, acquired the property in 1999. And then from 2001 to about 2008, there was some intermittent regional and detailed exploration done, which included some channel sampling, a little bit of mapping, some geophysics. And it wasn't until 2011 when Frontier came in and we did a MMI, or mobile metal ion survey, over the entire area. It would be over the main Pakiagama Lake and surrounding regions. And from 2012 to 2020, we've completed channel sampling, and we developed a suite of certified reference material with lithium, cesium, and rubidium, specifically for PAC, just to validate some of these higher readings or higher levels of lithium. And then in 2013 to 2021, we've completed 9 phases of diamond drilling, and we're working right now on phase number 10. A bulk sample was taken, a 300-ton bulk sample of the upper intermediate zone, was taken in 2015 and processed for to see if it was suitable as a direct shipping ore for the technical ceramic glass industry, and it passed all the tests for that. In 2015, we also initiated baseline environmental studies, including water sampling and some flora and fauna. And in 2018, we completed a pre-feasibility study for the production of spodumene concentrate only. That same year, we had the discovery of the spark pegmatite. A couple of years later, we discovered the bolt pegmatite. And just early this year, we completed a PEA for a fully integrated mining and production of the lithium compounds. Next slide. I've got a couple of slides now for each of these areas. The fact compilation, as I said before, was discovered by the Ontario Geological Survey in 1998 and acquired by Frontier a year later. But since 2011, we've completed a total of 7,528 meters of drilling and 40 drill holes, plus another 216 meters of surface channel cutting, and outlined a measured and indicated resource of 7.23 million tons, averaging 1.87% lithium oxide, plus another 2.76 billion tons of inferred, averaging 2.22. The deposit has been delineated over a strike length of 500 meters, with widths varying from 10 to 125 meters, and it remains open along strike and at depth. The next slide, if you just click through that, I'm going to show some of the results from this very first drill hole we drilled. The top of the hole was with the granite, and the bottom is at the metasediments, and that area between the CIZ and the contact with the metasediments was about 150, nearly 155 meters that averaged 1.22% lithium oxide. If you go to the next click, that is a 95-meter section of 1.62% lithium oxide. This was our very first hole. And if you click one more time, it shows the grade of the upper intermediate, which was 12 meters of nearly 3%. The picture on the top right is shows the compass there, and it's a picture of what we're calling snowshoe textured squee. And Peter Vanstone likes that term, and it basically shows the oriented quartz intergrowths within, I guess you could call it a pseudomorph of petalite. The core picture is a picture of our high grade core, and that particular area there ran over 5% lithium oxide. So it was certainly more spodumene in it than anything else. The next slide is basically the same kind of compilation of the spark area. It was discovered by Frontier in 2018, and since then we've drilled a total of 3,870 meters in 15 holes, plus 288 meters of channels, and with 9 of those holes, the 6 of them were drilled this spring and they weren't included in the resource, but with 9 of them, we've been able to outline an indicated resource of 3.26 million tons, averaging 1.6% lithium oxide, plus an additional 15.7 million tons of inferred, averaging 1.31%. It's been delineated over a strike length of 300 meters with widths up to 175 meters, and it remains open basically in all directions. The plan map to the right in the wider traces shows the drilling which we did in January, February, and March, and those holes haven't been included in that resource. And one of those holes was the 320-meter intersection of 1.68%. So it was pretty spectacular. It was continuous as well. This is the pictures show that very first channel we did, and the same picture you see from the helicopter view. It's not quite as clear there, but on the plan map with the drill hole traces, I've just done a section, and this section was part of the press release on September 13th, and it's a swath that's about 75 meters wide, and it crosses the entire deposit as we know it. And those are the drill holes with the lithium values plotted as bar scale. The total scale on each one of those bars is 5% Li2O, and those are just some of the total widths and the grades of those intersections. Of interest, the two deeper holes, the one that's 320 and 340 meters, and also the hole to the extreme right, which is dipping the other way of 101 meters, were not included in that resource calculation. So we've started with that first program in February to actually bump up some of our inferred into indicated and possibly even measured, I'm hoping. The next slide. These are block models of Spark and PAC. They're plotted at the same scale. It shows the pit shells, and you can't really see very well the traces of the drilling, but it does show the drill hole traces, and it's just to get an idea of the size and the orientation. The PAC deposit is roughly parallel, or it's concordant with the main trend of the rock, whereas the Spark deposit is almost at right angles. It appears to be some sort of a pull apart structure, and it may be the reason why Spark is such a wider and possibly shorter or not as lengthy deposit as the PAC. The PAC deposit we're finding is plunging to the south or the east southeast, and we have the wireframe legend. We got the upper central and lower intermediate zones showing up on the PAC deposit, but on Spark it only is basically an aplite with a UIZ overprint or an LIZ overprint. The next slide. Just a little bit on the mineralogy of PAC. These are we're done with QuemScan, and it shows the upper intermediate, lower intermediate, and the central intermediate. And these are from composite samples. And basically, just wanted to show the amount of spodumene and quartz, the ratio of those two for the upper intermediate and the LIZ, and the fact that there's very little accessory minerals or other minerals in the UIZ. It's mostly just spodumene and quartz. The LIZ has K-spar and plagioclase and muscovite and maybe up to 5% of other minerals in it. The Spark deposit shows the LIZ and the aplite being very similar. It looks like what we have is a pre-existing aplite with an overprint of the LIZ with slightly coarser grained feldspars and appearing in it. It shows that the spodumene and quartz are pretty much equal, around 30%. The plagioclase and the orthoclase are very similar for the LIZ versus the aplite. And what's interesting is the other accessory minerals are very, very small amounts compared to even to the LIZ in PAC. If you go on to the next slide. Pennick, it's a historical showing which was visited by us in 2018. There's a narrow 1 to 3 meter wide dikes which were traced for about 1.5 kilometers with a 16 meter wide blowout at the northwest end. We completed a channel sample on that the blowout and got almost 2% Li2O over or Li2O over 16 meters. The initial studies show that the purity of the spodumene is very similar to the PAC. It's a very low inherent iron from detection limit to about 0.01. Next slide. These are just some photographs from the Pennick outcrop. The one with the helicopter just in the top shows the main blowout outcrop, and the one in the middle shows these snowshoe textures of the squee, which is very reminiscent of what we're seeing in the UIZ and the LIZ at PAC. There's one place where we have a 4 meter wide pegmatite dike that Sam Mikas is standing on and looking at. And there's quite a long 1 meter wide to maybe 10 to 20 centimeters wide dike with this lepidolite quartz assemblage. When we took the picture, it was raining and the purple shows up quite well. Next slide. The bolt was, we found that during a walk from the camp over to Spark. It ranges from a few meters wide to over 50 meters, and it's been traced for 600 meters. It's generally concordant with the mafic metavolcanic host, and it looks like it's oriented subvertically. Similar lithology to Spark in that there's a pre-existing applate with this replacement of lower intermediate textures. We did a channel, and there was actually 2 channels cut, and the results were 36.4 meters of 1.5% Li2O. The next slide. This kind of shows why it's been hidden for a while. The surface of the pegmatite, it's typically dark gray and lichen covered and oxidized. It's less conspicuous than the lighter colored pack and Spark pegmatite. In fact, when walking over it, it's very much the same appearance as the mafic host rock that it's in. The next slide. Baseline environmental work that we've done is we started that with water sampling in 2015, and we've been continuing that on a regular basis. Flora and fauna study began in 2015. We brought in Blue Heron Environmental to help us with that, including the aquatic and fish studies. We set up a weather station in 2016, and we've been continuously monitoring the weather at 10-minute intervals since then. The map at the top shows some of the existing roads to trails to get to the various drill sites, and those black triangles are monitoring wells. Some of them nested that we've set up strategically for the PFS and the PEA. The map on the bottom shows an expanded view of the area, showing some of our surface water sampling sites. Several places we have, particularly on the Flanagan River, we have set up a base station where we're monitoring the flow of the river. And the different colors show the various watersheds in the area. The next slide. With continuing the baseline environmental work, we've done acid rock drainage studies. So we began with we completed static testing, which included the ABA and the shaker flask extraction. We did that from 2016 to 17. And we also completed a 40 to an 80-week kinetic testing on some of the samples of ore and waste from PAC. We set up field bins with initial sampling back in December of 2017. And in the last year, we've added another 4 barrels to include Spark, 2 of the ore and 2 of the host rock. The next slide. As far as community engagement, the project straddles the Deer Lake and North Spirit Lake First Nation land use areas based on trap lines. Currently, we have exploration agreements in place with both those communities, plus Sandy Lake First Nation and Kiwewin First Nation. And we've employed members of all 3 communities since February of 2017. And if you look at that map, you'll see that both are all Spark, PAC, and Bolt are all within Deer Lake's land use, but very close to North Spirit Lake. And the Panic is in the Sandy Lake Kiwewin First Nation area. Next slide. I just wanted to show this as an introduction to the pre-economic assessment that we've completed, showing the site layout. It shows both the PAC pit and the Spark pit. The kind of dark blue square around the PAC pit that's our existing mineral lease or mining lease, and the lighter blue area is what we have an application for a lease. That the application for the lease was surveyed 2 years ago, and it's in its final stages. So we should have that lease in place fairly soon. It includes an area all the way over to the Flanagan River, and that just shows a pipeline that we are proposing to handle any of the mine treated water. We would release it in the Flanagan River. The tailings area and the mill and airstrip and all that is fairly central to the project, with the mill being between the Spark pit and the Pack pit. I won't say too much more on that, as Bora will have something to say. And if we go on to the next slides. What's happening now? Well, we've completed a LiDAR survey. We attempted to do it last fall, but we've got it done this June, and it covers the entire area from almost from North Spirit Lake right up to the 65 kilometers to the north. It looks real good. It was done, the weather cooperated, and it'll be invaluable when evaluating the area for prospecting and that along the Electric Avenue. The map basically is a TIN, a triangular irregular network conversion of the point cloud. And then from that, we can get a DEM and a DSM. The next slide. Right now, we're working on a transient audio frequency magnetotic survey. It's we've got about 3 days left, and we should just about finish that grid that's shown on the map on the right. And our attempt is to characterize Pack, Bolt, and Spark using this naturally occurring electromagnetic energy, which is all the thunderstorm activity, to measure the local Earth's resistivity conductivity. We've used this on some uranium projects in the past with pretty good success at trying to outline deep-seated features. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what this survey is going to tell us. The next slide. We're right in the middle of phase 10 drill program. It's underway here right now. Our objectives are to upgrade the inferred, that's 15 million tons, to hopefully indicated and measured, and ultimately increase the size of it. We're including both delineation and geomechanical drilling in this program. The next slide. That's about it for my part. So Bora, you go right ahead.
Thank you for that, Garth. Much appreciated. For the time that I have left, I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into the pre-economic assessment that we have done that Garth mentioned earlier. I want to give a bit of a color out of the world of lithium production, and finally I'll close it off with our corporate overview. So looking into our economic assessment, it is essentially looking at the Spark and Pack deposit to put together a 26-year project mine life. All the numbers you see are in US dollars. That has a net present value of $974 million at 8% discount. At the time, we are looking at about $685 million in capex with 22% contingency built into it. Our plan for production around 23,000 tons of lithium hydroxide, and total return on the project after taxes around 21%, which is a very healthy rate of return. We have taken an average price of lithium hydroxide of $13,500 US per ton, which we'll talk about the pricing as we move forward. And as I mentioned, is only considering what is open pitable at surface at Pack and Spark deposits. With regards to concentrates, Garth mentioned that we did a bulk sample. So in 2010, we produced a very high quality, low impurity lithium concentrates, specifically looking into application from the mine site after a mill to direct sales. That goes to the technical market for the glass ceramics and fiberglass and glass ceramics market. That market is single-handedly controlled by one of the world's largest producers of lithium concentrate, that is Alarley out of the Greenbushes deposit in southwestern Australia. That controls about 90% of the technical grade spodumene concentrate market. And as you can see from the chart on the bottom, from the chemical compounds and our composite sample from the Pack deposit, that we hit the mark on not only on the lithium content, but also most importantly on the impurities. And with regards to the impurities, Fe2O3 iron is the big tell sign with regards to quality of the spodumene, and anything above that, it does not qualify for what the best glass producers in the world are looking for. Some of those glass producers that you might be familiar with in North America would be Corning, Schott, Kera Glass, and Asahi in Japan. With regards to lithium chemicals, we start assessing our process options. Our intent obviously taking our high quality, low impurity spodumene concentrate and turn into lithium chemicals. We are looking essentially in multiple processes to see what is the best selection criteria with regards to our environmental impact, cost of production, use of reagents, and any technology assist associated with these technologies. So globally, 80% of lithium chemicals are produced out of China, and that is done through the conventional processes that is using sulfate process. We are at this stage doing a mini pilot to see if we can remove some of the components of that sulfate process and make some tweaks to it to make it fit into our selection criteria. And alternatively, we are looking into an alkaline route that is being bench scaled by the company. We are also lucky to have received some government support and funding, specifically from Northern Ontario Heritage Fund, to looking into this process selection that we will make this decision before the year end. Now, with regards to lithium demand and supply, you see a chart in front of you from showing 2018 to 2040 with regards to with forecast. We see three demand drivers that really shapes up the gap that you are seeing between supply and demand. With first of all, percentage of demand growth in battery grade chemicals, percentage of new electric vehicle sales, and percentage growth in kilowatt per hour per each EV. And as you can see that with all the projects that are being added up on and brought together, there's still an unplanned new supply and unmet demand coming onto market anytime between the middle of the decade. With that in mind, and if you look at it and apply that to our regional ecosystem in North America, those gaps are become even more so even closer to 2030, because there are no lithium production that is happening in North America. As I mentioned earlier, 80% of lithium chemicals are being processed in China. Europe, similar story, but even more so dire situation with regards to forecast, as they are an early mover into electric vehicle adoption. They are going to see more of a demand growth and supply crunch. Spodumene is a preferred stock, and that's, I think, one of the better ways to explain when we apply our Frontier Lithium share price history over lithium chemical prices that is superimposed to that. You will see a bit of a trend building up 2014 all the way to 2018, as we refer to as Lithium 1.0, that there has been a growth in substantial capacity needed to be able to satisfy electric vehicle transportation, mostly in Asia. That bubble in 2018 ended with this some spodumene supply that been made available to Australia through the Chinese conversions. And you can see the dip in 2020 with the beginning of COVID. Now, every other country is making an announcement about offsetting their carbon emissions and adopting electrification of transportation. That really brought up the markets back onto the lithium at the beginning of the year, and that is clearly visible not only on our share price but more so on lithium chemical prices. With regards to spodumene, if you look at the January 2018 numbers, that was the high that I mentioned earlier. It was around $900 per ton. That is for 6% battery quality spodumene concentrate. Obviously, in the last 2 years, that came down substantially, around $400. And as of July, it started going back up again into making up the gap. Now, why do we see that quality of spodumene as a preferred stock? First of all, spodumene is a direct route to producing lithium hydroxide. albeit the brine operations of the lithium triangle of Chile, Argentina, and Bolivia. They produce a brine product that gets produced to a carbonate, and from the carbonate gets converted to hydroxide. And while spodumene can be directly converted to lithium hydroxide, directly gives us a lower cost source and an advantage. With regards to our peers, when we are looking at it, we always say that grade is king, and we have two highest deposits in North America, with PAC at 2.02 with measured indicated, and Spark at 1.59% compared to the rest. And I think Garth made a very valid point: the higher the grade, the less room for impurities to make it into the final product. And ultimately, it is driven by the end users. And you can see a quotation from Volkswagen that is talking about lithium mining, and they are referring that spodumene and hard rock resources are their preferred choice. Another aspect of quality feedstock, what it does is essentially enables a lower cost mining. As you look into ore and waste by project in the top left, and you can see our PAC plus Spark combine about 28 million tons of resource and putting about 102 million tons of waste. And you can see the comparison, how it compares to Galaxy project up in James Bay, Critical Elements project in Rose in Quebec, and Carolina Lithium of Piedmont Lithium down in North Carolina. Similar story obviously applies to the stripping ratio and the iron content that we mentioned earlier. At PAC is substantially low, at Spark is even acceptably low as well. And needless to say that Frontier has been substantially undervalued with regards to our market capitalization compared to resources available in all levels of category and in terms of lithium carbonate equivalent. With regards to our corporate overview, I'll start with the board of directors. A couple names to mention that's been added in the last little while, starting on the top right of Steve Letwin, that some of you might be familiar with. He was the president and CEO of IM Gold and was a part of the board of directors for about 10 years. Bart Meekus, he is a member of the Ojibwe First Nation out of Sandy Lake First Nation. He served as a deputy chief and chief for about 6 years and 10 years in service in total. And he was instrumental bringing infrastructure projects to the region. Sandy Lake has the largest population in the region, and it's north of us. So we have a strategic alliance with the Sandy Lake First Nation as well as all the other ones. Greg Mills on the right-hand side, he is one of the most recent additions. Greg brings in about 36 years of experience from capital markets. Most recently, he was RBC Capital Markets Global Equities Division, and he was running that. And Mark Bossano is another local name that you might be familiar with. He was most recently head of global nickel assets at Glencore. He brings wealth of information with regards to global battery metals business. That has obviously been supported with the balance of the board. On the leadership team, we recently added Dr. Nigel Chow. Dr. Chow is actually based out of Montreal. Prior to Frontier, he was a chief scientist at TNC Lithium. There are 4 lithium producers in the world, and TNC has been one of them. And he was most recently a chief technology officer at CATL in Quebec. And then David Ewing is starting, I think last week, if I'm not mistaken. He is the vice president of sustainability and external affairs. David has worked in the industry and has brought 20 years of experience on environmental matters, as well as building effective relationship with First Nations and permitting. We are being supported with the advisory board. Few to mention here is Mike Tamlin, previously spent most of his life career in Greenbushes at Greenbushes deposit in Australia. Peter Winstone, that Garth mentioned a couple of times, and Ernie Marcotte out of Thunder Bay with his experience in milling. So Frontier at the core, we are a tier 1 quality lithium resource globally. We are working our way to be a top 3 in size in North America. We have a significant growth upside, as Garth mentioned. Our net present value based on our PE is about $1 billion US from extraction and refining locally within the map that you see right there. Hard rock to spodumene hydroxide is a focus for us because longer the EV ranges are required, the cathode material prefers lithium hydroxide along with nickel cathode materials. Are proximate to the growing US electric vehicle market along with the EU markets is an advantage. And obviously being based out of Ontario, specifically Northern Ontario, with the rich history in extraction, refining, manufacturing, and markets. We are listed on TSX Venture under ticker FL, as well as OTCQX LITOF. We have about 195 million shares outstanding, and our cash position is around $8 million. Our job is to build a North American quality source for lithium hydroxide to contribute to electric vehicle and energy storage evolution. So in closing, you see a map here with Sudbury obviously highlighted with nickel and cobalt resources nearby, and our headquarters with our resource on the top left, which with a check mark we have established that, working our way on milling and mining and milling and towards chemical refining. And you can see in down south in southern Ontario as well as northern Michigan, there's a healthy population of traditional and new and up-and-coming OEMs that are trying to secure their supply to be able to produce the electric vehicles that are required by the market. So we believe we are ideally positioned to become a strategic regional battery metals supplier. It also would good to add that the Ontario grid is rather clean, being sourced with 96% zero carbon energy, which really gives us a competitive advantage in the global markets compared to Australian color of the grid and US the same way too. So with that, I'll just end the presentation here, and I'll pass it on to Attila for some questions if we have time.
Yeah, thanks, Bora and Garth. This was an excellent summary, and you've got a really good project here on your hands. Lots of good success in the last few years developing this. Yeah, we've got a few questions that came in. Well, I'll start with a bit of an ignorant one, but I was really wondering, how do you explore for these kind of pegmatites? Now, you kind of answered it because you just walk back from site to camp and you stumble upon it. But is there anything else you can do apart from smart geologizing? Like, you've shown some MT there. Does geophysics light these things up, or?
Yeah, what we did, Attila, is in 2001, the Houston Lake Mining covered the grid with magnetometer survey and a VLF survey. And basically what that did, it didn't highlight any of the pegmatites, but it did highlight the contact with the banded iron formations and the granite. So at least, we could see a structural zone. And an airborne survey was flown, a regional airborne survey was flown, which again, it highlighted that same structural zone. But it doesn't really help you too much to find the pegmatites. The OGS were the best source for us because we acquired it. But for Spark, a forest fire came through and probably cleared it. It made it a little more visible, but yet it appeared like any of the other granitic outcrops up here. Very similar color, but once you look at it, you can even see it on Google Earth. It shows up, but also 100 other or 1,000 other outcrops similar to that show up. I even thought maybe structural changes or cross-cutting features might help in a regional structural program. But I do think that we're in a lucky situation where we've acquired the ground. We have exclusive rights to explore it. And with this LiDAR survey is a good start. We can actually use LiDAR to do a structural interpretation. We've got the high quality image, which is going to help us see the shapes of these outcrops and things like that. and these aren't necessarily blind deposits. There is more than likely they're superficial. London has a reference to a paper that was written by Kerry Gallagher and Peter Vanstone back in 2007, and they talk about using geochemistry to find buried deposits. And it's actually a pretty good paper on it. One of the few on exploration for LCT pegmatites and rare element pegmatites. But they use enzyme leach techniques and lithogeochemistry, basically looking at ratioing lithium, rubidium, cesium, tantalum, niobium, things like that. But here we have dabbled a little bit with soil geochemistry, and we've done some dendrochemistry, which is the tree coring, with limited success. Like if we have a tree that's on top of the deposit, we can see elevated lithium in it. But when you get away from that, there doesn't seem to be a halo yet that we can see. But I spent most of my career looking for uranium deposits, and I really appreciate the kind of radioactive plumes and halos, and how they really help you find those types of deposits. But here, I think you almost have to stumble on them to actually find them.
Yeah, we're experimenting with tree bark sampling in this kind of terrain where we are up at the Fenelon belt. There, no outcrops there at all. So
okay, well,
but yeah, Maurice had a question here that's sort of related. Like, he was wondering whether he noticed that you have their TerraPlus RS125, and he said, is that device useful for exploring for lithium?
A TerraSpec, did you say?
Yeah, I'm not sure, Maurice. TerraPlus RS125. I don't know what that is.
I believe if it's a TerraSpec, we used it in our first drill program. It's shortwave infrared, and I was all excited about using that and trying to find. At that time, it was petalite and things like that, and looking at the different muscovites. We did some very detailed work on drill core, taking readings every 17 centimeters on the core. So we had about 50 readings per core box. And the one thing that it did show, we were able to find pollucite, because pollucite has a very distinctive spectra. Mm-hmm. There wasn't a lot of it, but we were able to identify that. We looked at it for trying to discriminate some of the different micas, but it just wasn't that effective. There wasn't enough reflectance from these. These are not very hydrated minerals, so it wasn't as effective as I thought it might be. Yeah, that was the TerraSpec, if that's what she's referring to.
Yeah, I think that's what he was. Yeah, there's a couple of questions here from Jeremy, who's actually in the audience. He's doing his PhD on pegmatites, so he's deep into the intricacies on his zonation and all that. And now some of this you already addressed a little bit, but especially with this large land package that you have, 65 kilometer strike length, like, do you see sort of regional zonation of these kind of the pegmatites in terms of potassium rubidium ratios or potassium cesium, or any kind of ratios that can help you vector? Or is it all kind of uniform along these different pegmatites? Or
well, we really haven't done a lot with it. I know I've had Peter Vanstone here, and we've walked over Pack, we walked over Spark, we walked over Bolt, and then we just got back a couple of days ago from Pennock, and what he sees is very it's all to do with the fractionation. He recognizes some of them as being more evolved, some of them being more primitive, based on the mineralogy and the patterns of this quartz spodumene intergrowth, and looking at some of the other mineralogy, like we don't have many potassic or of these other accessory minerals, phosphatic minerals that like to do at Tanko. Ours are it's simple mineralogy. PAC seems to be the most evolved that we have here, because we have identified pollucite. We haven't identified pollucite in any of the other deposits yet. Both Bolt and Spark look very similar in that they are largely aplytic, and it looks like it has an overprint, maybe a secondary intrusion of the pegmatite of some sort. But the lithium content seems to be pretty much the same across the entire deposit. It's not, we don't have the high grade pockets like we do at Pakiagama. So there is some zonation and fractionation differences there, but and there's not a lot that is exposed up at Pennock, but Pennock looks pretty exciting to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there seem to the lithium concentrations seem pretty similar in the different pegmatites, but then within one of the pegmatites, I guess this the Pennock, you have different layers or different zones within the one pegmatite. Right?
Yeah, at PAC we've got the upper intermediate that's exposed, and we have zones on surface that are 30 meters across, and we channeled it, and it's 4.5 to 5% all the way across. When we went up to Pennock, we saw this same snowshoe type textures, which looked like it was 100% squee, but in reality, when we channeled it, there was a lot of feldspar and plagioclase associated with it. So the spodumene levels were quite a bit lower, and as a result, the overall grade was quite a bit lower. It was a little disappointing. I just thought it was going to be higher grade.
Mm-hmm. Now, what about some of the other elements like that are typical in LCT pegmatites? Like, do you see any tantalum, niobium, cesium? I think one of your tables was showing some grades there for those.
Yeah, we've occasionally have reasonably high grades of tantalum at Spark. For like, I think at PAC our highest 1 meter interval of tantalum was probably in the neighborhood of 800 or 900 parts per million. At Spark, we're starting to see zones that are up over 2,000 parts per million, but they're very narrow, and they're probably related to blebs or larger crystals of this Colombo tantalite. So there's arsenopyrite, which is there's zones of that probably related to some kind of fracturing, and we get the one thing that's quite interesting is the boron. On the margins of the pegmatites, there's lots of tourmaline, like dark, almost black or blue tourmaline, and at PAC, there's a Holmquist.
Oh. Well, Elon Musk doesn't like this question.
I guess not. He must have turned it off. His very
yeah. Well, maybe we can switch to Bora. I have a question to you, which I think you have a slide prepared for that, because I figured ask you before, but
yeah.
But yeah, I guess in terms of prices for lithium, I think I'm probably not the only one that's struggling a little bit to put some of these intersections into perspective in terms of gold equivalent or copper equivalent or something like that. And because there's different prices for lithium, like lithium carbonate, lithium hydroxide. So I'd be really interested in seeing what this translates to in terms of gold. Sorry, Garth, you broke up there a little bit, so we figured Elon Musk doesn't like the question, so we switched a little bit. Yeah, all right, Bora.
Okay. Yeah. So with regards to that, back in 2018, there was a group called RSC. They published the top 5 intersections in North and South America, and we made the list with our one of our drill holes back in October in 2018. And this is their disclaimer and the formula they have used to calculate that. So essentially, if you were to take that and only for the lithium concentrate at a 6%. And if you look at the lithium concentrate price, and that is taken as recent as September 17 at $1,750, and the price of gold of $1790, that gives you the following intersections with regards to the hole for the 6 that Garth mentioned. 320 meters, averaging 1.68% will be equivalent of 5.78 grams per ton in gold equivalent over 320 meters. The high grade sections of 2.3% lithium oxide over 94 meters will be 8 grams per ton, and this will include the higher grade zone, which is 3.41% at 11 gram per ton. So That's essentially, and it doesn't even take into consideration of the chemical value. This is strictly based on the concentrate. There was another number that we could have used for the lithium concentrate prices. The market is, I'm sure it came across when I presented, is so tight right now that the juniors and the new producers in this industry are start auctioning their future contracts, and the last contract closed in at $2,450 for 6% lithium concentrate coming out of Australia. So that would have brought our gold equivalent for the high grade one that I mentioned here, the bottom one, 3.41% will be equivalent of 23 grams per ton gold equivalent.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, 320 meters of almost 6 grams per ton gold. That's pretty impressive. Yeah. Yeah, it almost looks like the pricing is a little bit like for diamonds. Like it depends a lot on purity or quality and sort of individual contracts rather than set prices.
Yeah, it's not a commodity, so it's very difficult to get a color on the price. There are 4 producers that controls 90% of the market, and as you mentioned, that all the prices are set between the buyer and seller in the long-term contracts. So that really has an effect on the price elasticity for sure, but essentially is also driven by the demand and supply and an imbalance of that too. So and the growing demand, right? So back in 2013, how many electric vehicle owners that you know, and I'm sure that number is changing in bigger cities every day. So that's really the driver behind it too.
Nice. There's a non-geology question here, which would be interesting to address also. Regarding infrastructure, like what kind of challenges do you have? Is it the road access, power, those kind of things?
Yeah, I do have a slide on that, but I probably don't have to pull it up. But specifically, we are blessed that the government has taken initiative along with the First Nations in the region to establish a power corridor and infrastructure corridor to the north. So we are about 185 kilometers north of Red Lake. We are serviced with a winter road. But the government started back in 2016, if I'm not mistaken, in a Watte power line that is to be able to remove diesel-generated power generation in the communities. And they put in the hydro line right now. Garth, you probably have more up-to-date information than I do being on site there, but the last picture we had taken in March was showing a substantial work that is happening with the 400-person camp that is being going up there. They're planning to finish the power line project in 2023. That should give us a lot of room on the winter road to be able to perhaps break ground and expand the project.
You're muted, Garth.
There. Yeah. We haven't seen anybody from the camp, but we have heard activity over there with helicopters flying. And a couple of days ago, there was some blasts from a quarry. So there's some rock crushing going on, and so they've been fairly active in the last little while. I think they too were shut down in July and August, and are probably just starting up again. They're about 10 kilometers away, and it's a 200-man camp.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Then Ed had an additional exploration method, prospecting at night with long and shortwave UV light, because spodumene is supposed to light up quite vibrantly.
Well, I think if I'm not mistaken, Wagenite does, and some of the other scheelite and things like that. But yeah, I know that if you put a flame on spodumene, you'll get different colors. I've seen that with some of the old timers, but
he says with the UV light, spodumene fluorescence is pink, orange, and yellow.
Ah.
So there you go. I don't know about the safety concerns of wandering around there in the dark, but
well, it's a good idea.
Yeah. And then I'll probably not read all of this, but in the chat. There was quite a long geologic back and forth on the age dates and whether these pegmatites are pre-deformation or syn-deformation or post-dated. and it looks like the conclusion from Greg and Lyle Hellers seems like that the pegmatites are post-dating the regional deformation, and they're associated to late plutons, and they're unmetamorphosed. They show unmetamorphosed primary textures. So that's sort of in line, Garth, with what you're seeing.
Possibly, but I know, and certainly the PAC pegmatite and in the spark, we're seeing a foliation within the applite, and not necessarily in the upper intermediate zone, but certainly in the applite, it looks like it's regionally deformed. So there's certainly a different age between this pre-existing applite and the bulk of the pegmatite. Yet at Spark, we're seeing folding, like chevron folding within the pegmatite, which, unless that's part of the emplacement, it could be as it's cooling. I don't know enough about pegmatites to really understand, what happens when they're cooling, and if there's still stresses on them as they're, I guess, being evolving. So I'd kind of like to see that chat.
Yeah, well, what I'll do is I'm gonna copy this over here, and then we'll circulate it after the meeting to all the people that were on the call. Yeah, I mean, that's always really helpful to have a lot of these geology gurus on these calls.
Exactly. Well, I know
everybody has different expertise, right?
We don't have any age dates for the pegmatite, but I have a feeling there's some ages for some of these paraluminous granites, and it's about 2.65 or somewhere in there. They're definitely younger than the greenstone belts, but I don't know how much younger.
Yeah, Mike Easton says 2679 on the pegmatite and 2672 on the applite.
Ah, nice.
Yeah. So now,
pretty close.
Yeah. So I guess I mean, I just saw recently some news, maybe today, that Sibanye-Stillwater acquired a lithium project in Nevada after they also bought something in Finland. So it was a little bit weird to me because Sibanye, I didn't consider them, well, they're precious metal miners, but even them, they're going into nickel and lithium now. So I found that quite interesting. So yeah, I mean, definitely puts your project, with this positive PAA and trends. I'm sure you're definitely on the radar of some of the. I'm not sure who would be producers, I guess, for lithium that would be interested in your project.
Bora, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, out of the 4 or 5 lithium producers, Albemarle, based out of US, is probably one of the largest one. They have some capacity in the US. They also have a tier 1 deposit in Chile, in the Atacama region, as in brine, and Greenbushes deposit in southwestern Australia. That will be the number 1. Then it's followed probably by SQM, Tianqi, and Ganfeng are the ones that are actively investing in this space, along with Livent. So most of the global production is coming from brines originally, and most recently from spodumene. And there's quite a few interest into the clay projects, especially the ones in Nevada. That being said, the market is changing, and the end users are requesting their all of their components for their vehicles to be socially responsible and environmentally conscious. Right. So disturbing large areas on a challenge for most of the end users. So they are finding that the traditional hard rock open pits are more amenable and lower impact, especially if it is done properly with the Canadian guidelines in our backyard. So that definitely gives us an advantage, and end users and existing producers are aware of that. And there isn't any lithium project like this quality and low impurity in North America within a supported regional supply system with the OEMs in our doorsteps, literally, and let alone all the other battery metals with nickel and cobalt graphite being available in the province as well. Definitely is an attractive position for us, not alone, but for all our stakeholders and for Northern Ontario.
Nice. Yeah, I don't see other questions coming in for now, but yeah, please pose any that are still there. But yeah, so basically it's drilling time right now, and what are the plans there? Just to kind of wrap up.
Yeah, I'm hoping to drill because we lost that month or so in July. Our plan
forest
then
fires.
well, we were going to drill I don't know, maybe 2,000 meters or so, and then put the camp on hold, get results back, and then come back in and just follow up about now with just some other infill drilling that we may need to satisfy the requirements for a pre-feasibility study. So right now, I'm hoping to be able to. I'm hoping we're going to get a nice fall. We're going to get good weather. We're not going to get snow until way on into November, and I'm just going to stay here till the lake freezes over.
Nice.
But probably realistically, we're looking at 3 more weeks, 4 weeks at most, and I'm hoping to get 2,000 meters and probably close to 8 to 10 holes done. I'm also hoping to complete all of the geomechanical holes to test the stability of the pit walls, and we'll do some infill drilling to just bump up that resource.
Your camp is fly in, right? So you
Camp is fly in, yes.
Yeah. So it's chopper supported program, and
we have a chopper here right now. It's
Yeah.
supporting the geophysics and also the drilling. So yeah, we're hopefully we'll be wrapping up in 3 to 4 weeks.
good. Yeah, all the best with it, and hopefully the assay turnaround times in the labs pick up a little bit.
We'll try to put a push on that, but we're actually getting pretty good at doing an estimate just from recognizing the spodumene in the core.
Yeah.
We've been doing that since we started drilling on Spark, and we're finding our results are pretty close to the accuracy of the analysis.
Yeah.
It's not as reliable, but it does work.
Can't press please those anymore. Those times are gone.
Exactly.
That's release visual estimates, but yeah. Well, good luck with the programs. Yeah, both of you. Thanks for your time, and thanks for the audience, for everybody attending today. And yeah, we'll share this recording of the talk as soon as it's available in a week or two. So yeah, all the best. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Okay.
Yeah. Take care. Bye.